of the things that Paul Saladino always wants to talk about is plant defense chemicals and about eating plants that plants don't want you to eat them. And so when you eat them, they're excreting these plant defense chemicals. Now, my thing on that is, and this is one of the things that Rhonda Patrick likes to talk about, is that may have a hormetic effect. So there might be benefit to that, just like there's benefit to cold therapy and hot therapy, and that there's some foods that eating them, even though they do have these defense chemicals, those defense chemicals, at least in certain doses, might have a beneficial effect on your body.
Makes good sense to me. I'll say this. I'm going to try carnivore because I told Paul I would. I'm going to do blood work first and then after. But I'm not giving up my athletic greens, and I'm still going to eat cucumbers, which he says are a fruit, and so I'm home free. He told me I have to cut the skin off them too. So I'm going to try it and see what happens. But I've also talked to Rhonda, and she's really big on this broccoli sprout thing. And a lot of things that are incompatible in the Instagram space make a lot of sense to me scientifically, like eating some greens but also eating some meat, et cetera. In terms of plants being bad for us, I mean, there are a lot of toxic components of plants. Typically, the further out on the branch you go towards fruit, the less toxic they become, right? Eating the bark is generally more dangerous, although berberine, a commonly used substance for lowering blood glucose, right, like metformin, so our poor man's metformin is made from tree bark, basically.
And aspirin is as well, right?
Aspirin, derivatives, things of that sort, alkaloids. There is something interesting about plants, and I've talked to Paul and other, serious colleagues in amino acid science space. So there is something called non-protein amino acids. There used to be a guy at Stanford who studied these, and he's a world expert in non-protein amino acids. Many seeds and plants contain amino acids that can't be incorporated into proteins and may have some toxicity to them if they are ingested. Now, there's never been a widespread systematic exploration of all the seeds and all the plants that people eat to see whether or not there are a lot of non-protein amino acids. But these things act in a sort of prion-like way when they get into the brain or they get into different tissues. And so, I don't want to spark fear that every, sunflower seeds are going to give you prion-like syndromes, but it's conceivable that by eating certain plant compounds, one could ingest these non-protein amino acids, that they would get incorporated into existing proteins, or that they would look enough like protein amino acids that they could sneak their way in across the blood-brain barrier or into cells and cause certain kinds of dysfunction. And this particular lab's focus was on figuring out whether or not neurodegeneration was a downstream effect of some non-protein amino acids.
Really?
So in that sense—
What was their conclusion?
Their conclusion was that a lot of plants, and in particular a lot of types of seeds, contain non-protein amino acids that if they were to be incorporated into mammalian tissues and cells, that would be very bad.
There's also like low levels of certain chemicals that are in seeds that are really bad for you, like apple seeds, right?
Cyanide.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there was this idea years ago that the marijuana plant could inhibit the reproduction of animals that want to eat it by way of increasing aromatization, the conversion of testosterone to estrogen. And then when I was in college, there was this thing everyone would say, don't smoke the seeds, it'll make you sterile. People used to say that. Maybe
really?
But they were high.
Where were you going to school? That's funny that was in college.
Yeah, I remember people saying, don't smoke the seeds, they'll make you sterile.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah. I don't know that there's any truth to that.
How many children were accidentally birthed because
during college?
Someone smoked the seeds, like, don't worry, baby, I'm smoking seeds.
Yeah, I guess we should say as a universal rule, never use the argument that something lowers sperm count or testosterone as contraception.
Yes.
Right? Because I know a former pro bodybuilder who was juiced to the gills and told me that he conceived both of his children on his heaviest cycles ever.